In this video, we're going to look at how to paint the baseboards of your house using spray paint. Welcome to the Average Me channel. I'm Mark, and in this video we're going to explore how I painted the baseboards in my home with spray paint. The reason this all started is I was visiting a building and I noticed that they were doing just massive remodeling of all the public areas. And they were doing the baseboards with spray paint. And I thought, wow, that's got to be a time saver. I looked at them, it looked really good. So I thought it'd be interesting to try this at my own house. I'd like to share the experience, how I did it, and whether I think it's actually better than painting the traditional way with a brush. Here's how we started. The first thing I wanted to do is make sure that I started with clean baseboards. One of the reasons I was painting in the first place is they were getting dirty, old, looking a little worn, and they needed to, the reason we all paint, they just needed a new life. So I started by cleaning them. I just took a rag with dish soap. Wanted to make sure I got all the dirt and if there was any oil or grease or anything like that. Now you might say, why would there be oil on your baseboard? Well, I have a cat. And you know how animals will rub up against things? I just wanted to make sure they were really clean to receive the new paint. You might even want to take some fine grit sandpaper or a sanding block and run that along your baseboards before you start. I didn't do that. The next thing I did was tape everything off. Spray paint has a lot of overspray, so I made sure that I taped above the baseboard and I covered the wall with paper, whether it be craft paper or newspaper, just something to cover it up. You could use plastic, anything you happen to have or like to use. And I did the same thing with the floor. The first thing I did is I wanted to put a base coat just to make sure that the paint would stick really well. You might want to skip this part. I felt more comfortable for the few dollars it cost to buy a can of Kills, and I sprayed that on first. Now, the only drawback to this is there is a delay. There's a waiting time, a drying time of about an hour in between. You don't have to sand or anything, but you do have to wait. Once that hour was up, then I came back with the spray paint, and actually one coat looked really good. You probably don't need that second coat. The Kills is white, the spray paint's white, nothing was showing through. It just made me feel a little more comfortable. They take a lot of abuse, baseboards. I just thought it'd be nice to have a second coat of paint. And then I waited, I don't know, I wanted to be really sure it was dry. I think I might have waited a half hour to an hour for that. And I peeled everything off. The results were fantastic. It looked so good. I mean, you're not seeing, the brush streaks. Everything was perfectly clean because we did the taping. The lines were just so sharp and crisp. The floor was a little different because it had caulk. Unless I wanted to peel the caulk off or recaulk, I couldn't get any straighter really than the caulk itself. But it looked really, really good. And I can't tell you how pleased I am with the results. Would I do it that way again, and should you do that? Well, there are a lot of things to consider. One of the things that I really didn't consider when I decided to do this was why they were doing it initially in the building that I saw. It was so easy the way they did it because they had the carpet pulled up, they were going to lay new carpet, and they were going to paint the walls. So they didn't have to tape anything off. They just came through and spray painted everything. It was so quick. They're painting the walls anyway. And then they only had to be careful of painting nice straight lines when they painted the wall and where the wall meets the baseboard. They didn't have to worry about the floor. They were putting new carpeting in. So in that case, it made a world of sense to do it. But how about in my case? Well, it really depends on where you want to spend your time. For me, I hate cleaning paintbrushes, especially if you're working with oil paint. I just don't like it. And when I was done with the job, there was nothing to clean up. I peeled off the tape, crumbled it up, threw it in the trash. That was really nice. However, I paid for that on the front end because that's where I had to spend more time. If you have a real steady hand, it might just be easier for you to take that paintbrush and just do a nice clean line along the top and bottom of the baseboard. If you're going to tape it off anyway, it doesn't take that much more time to get some newspaper, or better still, get the brown craft paper, because you lay that down and everything is covered and you're on your way. So it really is a matter of personal preference. It's a little bit of prep work. I admit that. And is it worth the trade-off? I just don't know. It also depends on the areas in which you're working. In some areas, if you have a really long stretch, I mean, you can get that taped off in no time. If you're working around corners and you're going in areas like kitchens where you're going behind refrigerators, the smaller areas, it just might be easier to get in there with a brush. But this was a great experiment. And I can tell you, results-wise, that gets a solid A+. As far as work, if you don't feel comfortable, you don't have a steady hand, I think this might be something you'll want to consider. If you're a skilled painter, an experienced painter, you're probably looking at me and shaking your head and saying, why would you ever do that? Other than the example I gave when, it was just so fast and easy. So I think this was I had a lot of fun doing it. I have to admit that. It was really interesting to me. The results came out so well, so I'm pleased with all that. My wife is happy as can be, and that's the main thing, isn't it? So take away what you will. I'd love to hear your comments, especially those of you who are experienced painters. I'd like to hear your thoughts on my choices here. So thanks for watching. As always, I encourage you to like and share the video. Leave your comments down below. If you haven't already, please subscribe. I do a lot of things on this channel. I think it's a lot of fun. I think you'll enjoy it. And if you do, ring the bell icon up above. That way you'll know when I post new videos. Thanks again. I'm Mark. This is the Average Me Channel.